Thank you for joining us today, Deane. Let me just introduce who's here off camera. I'm Sally Harris doing the interview, and we have Judy LaPorte and Leah McBain, and we're at the Newbury Public Library on December 16th, 2024. So could you give us your name and when and where you were born?
My name is Deane Geddes. I was born in November 1946.
And where were you born?
I was born at the Boston Osteopathic Hospital in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts.
Aha. And can you tell us a little bit about your family? Siblings, parents?
Yes. I was raised south of Boston, a little town called Stoughton, and along with my sister. And we got here because my father's sister lived in Claremont. She and her husband lived in Claremont, and they had a summer cottage over here in Newbury Harbor. And they purchased that place in the December of 1951. That was my first visit here. And I remember it quite well because my aunt was trying to entertain myself and my little sister, and she found these cookie sheets in the kitchen, and we used them as sleds to slide down the pathway. So that started my journey to Newbury in the Lake Sunapee region.
And when you came up initially, did you just keep coming to visit her, or how long was it till you got your own place or your family?
Yeah, no, it's my dad and her sister and my aunt were very close. They had three other siblings, but those two were the closest. So we came often. We shared holidays together, Thanksgiving and Christmas. They didn't have any children. So I like to tell people that my sister and I adopted them every summer, and we had a chance to come up and spend a couple of weeks with them. And then by the time I was around 10 or 11, one of the volunteer activities that my uncle was involved with in Claremont is that he grew up in the YMCA program in Claremont, attending camp over on Rand's Pond in Goshen. And I guess that probably would have been around 1920. And so after he went away and got educated and came back again, that was one of the volunteer things that he worked on, fundraising and that sort of thing for the Y camp. So he turned to me and he said, "If you go to camp for 2 weeks, I'll let you come and stay with me in Newbury for 2 weeks." And that was it, and that started it. And I stayed with the camp program as a camper, and then a counselor, and then a swimming instructor. That camp is kind of famous for having, back in the mid-'60s, we had a director in Claremont that was really a go-getter, proactive, and he wanted to quadruple the size of the camp. So he had to find some real estate. So he got he got the board of directors of the Claremont Y together and said, "Let's go look for a place to move this." And that eventually turned into Camp Coniston up in Croydon.
Wow.
And so I was there on opening day as the newly minted waterfront director for the boys' side. And I stayed with that until I went off into the Army. So I spent every summer up here since then.
Wow.
And then after that, because I loved the place and I was very close to my aunt and uncle, in about 1980, we realized that my wife and I and our 3 children just couldn't come and crash in on with these octogenarians. And so we bought a place on Newbury Heights, as our kids called it, our little house. And that was where we came in the winter to ski and in the summer to use the lake to water ski. So that was about 1980. And then when I finally retired in 2002, I moved up here. So.
Full time. So you were how old when you first started coming up?
I just turned 5.
You just turned 5. And where was the house where was your aunt and uncle's house?
It's right across the street from Judy's.
Oh, it's the house that you live in now.
No,
it's not.
To be accurate, what my aunt and uncle opened was an old cabin built in a real log cabin built in 1903. The local law is that a lot of the stonework that we have around the stone walls and the stone gates of the driveway were built by Italian workmen who lived in this area here. And those names come up, like DiGilio and a few other that did that at the turn of the last century. So they had a cabin. So when I came along, I wanted to I wanted to own that property, but I couldn't stay there in the wintertime because you just can't get water to it. It's sitting up there on a ledge. So I was building a garage, and to bring my stuff from Massachusetts up here. And my wife turned to me and said, "Why don't we put an apartment over the garage? Then we'd have a place to stay in the winter." Brilliant. Never realizing that would turn into my retirement home.
Okay.
So there's actually 2 buildings on that lot now.
Ah, yes. Okay.
So no matter what window I look out at, I can see Judy.
What could be better than
But
that?
that, really.
Poor man.
And then where was the house on Newbury Heights where you
Oh, it was when you go up Newbury Heights. There's actually 2 streets that go up. Newbury Heights Road will take you to to the housing development, and but the road to the right is called Lakeview Avenue, and I lived up on there. Also, a house that was built around 1910, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what are some of your special memories of this area?
Oh, it's probably the big things are the fact that I learned to swim in the lake, the fact that my children learned to swim in the lake.
Where did you learn to swim? Was it at the Newbury Town Dock, or
No,
was it on your own property?
My uncle's property
Your
had a
uncle's
dock
Okay.
down at the shoreline.
And did they just throw you in off the end and say, swim?
Yeah, we
Deane?"
just started. My mother was really a good swimmer, and she made sure both my sister and I learned how to swim. So
Okay, perfect.
yeah.
And so when you were here in the summers, where did your family do your shopping and things like that?
Shopping?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was playing out in the lake all the time. And, actually, my wife had a really good system when our children were young, and I had one of those travel jobs. I was gone all week. And so on the weekends, that was my time with my kids. And so when we packed the car in Massachusetts to come up here, my wife had all the groceries, all the meals planned and everything so that we could just be together and play. So I don't know, but I do have a grocery story. I remember when I was about 6 or 7, I was staying with my aunt. And it's kind of a private spot with a long driveway. And I said to her, "Oh, there's a truck coming up the driveway." And I looked out and I could see this big green truck. It was a pickup truck that had a canvas back on the back end. And this guy gets out, big, tall fella, smoking a pipe. And he comes around, and the truck was covered with canvas in the back. And he undoes all the canvas, and he whips out, this scale. It was Joe DiGilio, I learned, and that's how my aunt got her fresh vegetables. Joe came by on a weekly basis, and it was really fun. I can remember him. My aunt would go pick something out, and he'd put it on the scale, and he'd puff on his pipe, and he'd grab a paper bag, a flattened paper bag before you open them up, and he'd start writing on it. And I'm sure it was, what the product was and what it weighed and what the cost was. And it went around the truck doing that, and pretty soon he'd total up the bag, and my aunt would pay. And I'm going, wow, I never experienced anything like that at the IGA down in Stoughton, Massachusetts.
Did the milkman come too?
The what?
The milkman?
I don't remember the milkman.
Okay.
No.
Just curious.
I know growing up in Massachusetts, we had a milkman for a while, but it was, as it turned out, it started to get less expensive to go to the then supermarkets that were starting out.
Yeah. So when you were here as a young person, did you have a lot of friends in the area? Did you meet other kids?
Well, I call myself a weekender. When I was young, I was usually with my aunt liked to fill her house with her relatives or nieces and nephews. So it was usually one of my cousins or something like that. But no, I got to be very friendly with several of what I would call the local kids in the area. There was a chap that worked on the gas dock for Larry Bonner, and his name was John Cushing, and we were about the same age. And he disappeared for about 30 years, and then one day I got a knock on the door, and he showed up, and he bought a house here in the area, and we see him every summer now. So there was John, then there was Pam Lynn, which was Alice Lynn's daughter. She was my age, and one of the Diekman girls was there, and the Diekman boys, and Sue Ellen Stark. Their family ran the Frost Top hamburger stand, ice cream place, and a few others, mostly kids from Bellas Falls. A lot of people from Bellas Falls came over and either kept boats at the marina here or had houses up on Bay Point Road.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And what observations do you have about Newbury Harbor and how that's changed over time? I'm putting together a slideshow for the Historical Society, and I've got that all over my office right now. And fortunately, I've been able to get images of the harbor here from about the 1890s up to about 1925, and boy, has there been a lot of changes. A lot of people, one of the oldest buildings that we have here in town is the Silly Tavern, but nobody knows where it is, and because it's hidden behind a retail shop down here. A lot of people refer to it as Outspoken because it was a bicycle shop for so many years, but I know it because Judy's husband grew up in that building. His family operated a gas station, a service station there, and yeah. And how about the mountain and the lake? What kind of changes have you seen over your time here?
The mountain. I learned to ski in the 1960s on Mount Sunapee, and it was just a wonderful family place to go. And then when the Muellers leased the mountain from the state, they leased just the ski area, they gave us a gift every year. It was either another lift, another lodge, or another trail to ski on. So every year they did something for us, and they did that right up until the time that they sold the business. So I've seen a lot of very positive things happen there. I've been pleased to I used to work up there in the wintertime as they had a guest host program. They called them ambassadors, and that was wonderful. Our job was to stand in the parking lot, and you knew when somebody got out of the car whether they'd been here before or not. If their eyes were as wide as dishes, they wanted to know where are the bathrooms, and where do I buy my ticket. And that was our job, is to make sure that they got comfortable real quick and got on the mountain as fast as possible. That was great. It's the people I worked with, the staff at the mountain were just, it was like coming home.
And how about the lake?
The lake. I spent an awful lot of time on the lake, and in fact, this slideshow that I'm working on right now, it really talks about the shoreline between the Newbury Town Dock and up to Davis Caverns. And as a kid, I snorkeled all of that. I can remember I bought my first mask and snorkel from Wayne LaPorte.
We did too.
And what got me interested is that if you go off the shore of the lake there are a lot of fallen trees that have sunk to the bottom. And fishermen's lures love to get trapped on those things. And here, in less than 10 feet of water, I could dive down and pull all these lures off. and give them to my fisherman friends. So I like to. We're absolutely blessed to have the quality of the water that we have here, and as big as it is, the highest big mountain lake in the state of New Hampshire. It's absolutely blessed to have this, and people discovered it. Back in the 1880s and 1890s, after the Civil War, they started coming here originally for the altitude. The nice high crisp air. But pretty soon, hotels, started to pop up. Steamships, trains. It changed Newbury.
Do you remember any of the hotels?
Yes. Certainly the Sunnipi Hotel, built by Dr. Quackenboss, and certainly the Ben Muir Inn in Sunnipi Harbor. They were regular fixtures. I had an older cousin that carried bags there all summer to put himself through college at the Ben Muir Inn.
How about, can you talk about the community here since you've moved here? What's it been like community-wise and the neighborhood and so forth?
As I mentioned, I had one of those jobs where I traveled a lot, and I never got to do anything civic-minded. And when I came to Newbury, it was at a time that somebody had put an ad in the Shopper and said that the town is looking for people to work on various boards. And so actually my wife called them, sent me down. And before long, I found myself with a seat on the planning board and the Conservation Commission, which I'd never done anything like that before, and that was great fun because I got to see other Newbury residents on a monthly basis and get involved with the health and the welfare and how people wanted Newbury to look. Was wonderful on the planning board. Spent a long time there. Today I'm a cemetery trustee, and also on the Newbury Historic Society.
Excellent. Are there any special people you remember who contributed to the life of the community?
Oh yeah, certainly Wayne and Judy. I remember one year when I was taking my boat out of the water, I borrowed my son's truck. He'd just bought this truck. He was so proud of it, rusty old thing. And I got my boat on the launch ramp, and just about at the top of the ranch, and the entire trailer hitch fell off. And we're on the ramp. Fortunately, somebody had the presence of mind to run around and put a rock under the tire so the boat didn't go back down into the water. And I'm stuck. What do I do now? People are waiting to take their boats out as well. So I ran down to Wayne, and I said, "Hey, Wayne, I got trouble." He says, "You want to use my truck?" And he handed me the keys, and I got the boat off the ramp real quick, thanks to him. But there's dozens of stories like that with neighbors. I remember when you had the putt-putt golf course there.
Tell me about that. I didn't know.
I forgot to mention that.
Wayne, absolutely fascinating guy. He brought diving to Lake Sunapee and did that, but he also was a very fine contractor and an electrician. And when I would run into electrical difficulty, he was my first guy. But anyway, he did many things. And one year, I guess for several years, they turned their house lot into a putt-putt golf course. And people would arrive by boat, and it was an evening activity that they could do, for folks around the lake, or drive by car.
25 cents a game.
Those golf clubs are still in your garage.
That's fabulous.
It is.
I never knew that.
It was a great place for families to spend time in the evening usually.
Are there other folks in the community that stand out in a particular way?
Alice Lynn.
Tell us a little bit about Alice.
As a teenager, we used to hang out at the dock, as young teenagers still do today. And if it was foul weather or something, Alice always opened her home. And so we would hang out there, play board games and things like that. And she was she was like everybody's mother. She was absolutely wonderful lady, and also a wonderful historian. She started the Newbury Historic Society. and spent many years doing that.
It's pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
Anyone else we should mention?
The the other ones would be colorful ones, and coming to mind are the Rollins brothers.
Okay.
And as a teenager, the Rollins brothers would come down off the hill in their horse and buggy, and that was a kind of a novelty for me to see grown men still driving on a horse and buggy, and they'd come down to the trading post and buy groceries and
beer.
Well, I think a lot of people gave them beer. And but anyway, yes, they like to have a glass of beer, but that was they'd let you go right up and pat the horse, and they'd pose for photographs. It was wonderful characters, wonderful.
That's great. Let's see. How about your career-wise? What did you do over the course of your career? Because I know when you came here, you started doing real estate.
Yes, that was
but
a
tell us
second
about
career.
what you did.
Yeah, I used the GI Bill to go back to the university, and I started working for after graduation. I started working for a couple of MIT professors that had developed some instruments that are used with lasers. And so I spent the next 30 years in the laser industry. While these two guys were the scientists in developing things, they had a group of people actually building the things, and I got involved with that. And as the company grew and they became interested in use of lasers, they needed somebody to answer the phone. Can I do this with your product? And that got me into a kind of an applications engineering role where I would talk to customers on the phone about what it is that I thought, whether it would work or not, and that sort of thing. And that kind of turned into a sales role. And so I traveled around the United States quite a bit, and I needed some help. So I started hiring people and based them in California and Chicago and Dallas. And that allowed me to turn my attention to Europe, where we had quite a bit of customers in Europe. So I started going over there a lot. And one day I turned to my boss. I said, "We need to get another guy in Europe." And so I hired a fellow that was fresh out of Max Planck Institute with a doctorate degree in physics, and we set up an office in Munich, and I helped him out for about a year, and then he kind of took over, and then I focused my attention on Japan, and I opened 2 offices in Japan, one in Tokyo, one in Osaka, and I just opened another office actually in China.
Wow.
It was at the time I used to go to Hong Kong quite often, but Hong Kong had a 100-year lease from the Brits, and when that expired in 80,
90s, I think.
In the 1990s, we were allowed to, the Chinese government created an enormous area just over the border from Hong Kong. They called it an international trade zone. And so we opened an office there to help sell products into the Chinese area.
Wow.
And at that point, the fellow that I had hired at our office in Europe left the company to start his own business. So they didn't have a captain of the ship. So my boss said to me, "Hey, you want to go over there?" And so my 2 girls were in college at the time. So my son and my wife and I went over, and we ended up spending almost 5 years there in Germany.
That's pretty cool. And then when you retired, you moved here.
Yes.
And that's when you started to do your second
Yes.
career?
Yeah. The planning board and the conservation commission were great fun, but they didn't fill the days. So I decided to get involved in real estate, and I've been doing that for about 20 years now. That's been great fun. Meet some absolutely wonderful people. Whenever you have a chance to be in a group with like-minded people, it's always fun.
Any good Newbury house sale stories?
Oh my. Um, I think the best story is a rumor, but it was about 20 years ago. They were building a big mansion up at what was the name of the place on Job's at the edge of Job's Creek that used to be a
Grand Leadon.
Was it
Grand Leadon?
No,
No.
it used to be the alcohol.
Seminole
yes.
Point.
Seminole Point.
Seminole Point. They'd torn down the buildings at Seminole Point, and they're building this fabulous. And the rumor of the day was that it was Arnold Schwarzenegger that was building a house there. So that's probably been the best rumor that I could remember. Of course, it was not Arnold that built out.
No.
It was a friend of Mitt Romney's,
Yeah.
and that's in there. So that's been. But real estate is I've watched over 20 years. One of the things that is just natural is teardowns. You know, people are buying these beautiful old cottages with grand porches along the lake, but they're old. You know, and yes, there are fire traps and stuff, so they're tearing them down and rebuilding. The word is McMansions that they're building on here. So we've seen the character of the lake change. You often hear, especially from my friends who've lived here all their lives, is that it's for the wealthy now, to be on the lake, which is true, and. Newbury is still as I like to say with my real estate hat on, it's low tax Newbury, and so it still has a lot to offer for people like myself who are coming up, to retire here.
How about, can you tell us a little bit about town meeting and voting in Newbury, since in your experience?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the wonderful dinner that the NBC puts on before the town meeting. Absolutely fantastic. There's some lady that always brings baked beans and she puts peaches in with it. I'd never done that before. Well, we have this, wonderful meeting in March. We have a very fine meal. All volunteers put it together and bring stuff, and it's the way that New Hampshire towns have been running themselves now for nearly 150 years. Is that once, I've forgotten whether it's the second Tuesday of March or whatever, people get together and they vote on it. And usually it's the big things. I have photographs of South Newbury and of people getting ready to go in for town hall for the town meeting, and it's all about taxes. What are the taxes going to be? And if you look at the photograph, there are no women in the photograph. It's only men. So we've had quite a change. Quite a change since there. But that system of government that we have here, I think, works extremely well. I think that they've been, particularly the town of Newbury and the town of New London and Sunapee, have been very progressive to work closely with the Protective Association to make sure that we have, rules in place that preserve these wonderful assets that we have here in our town.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have a sense of Newbury as a unique place? Its lifestyle, its homes, its community. Is there anything you'd want to say about that?
Well, I'd be biased to start with because this is where I always came, and this is where I always, wanted to be. And fortunately, I've had some time to be able to do that. I can only compare it to the town that we raised our children in Massachusetts. And Newbury is just a little bit a smaller version of that. When we first moved into that town, when my wife and I built a house there down in the 1970s, there were still about 15 active farms in that town. And they're all housing developments now. And here, I can only think of one really active farm. There are other people doing small-scale farming, but the Schroeders are keeping up the farm thing, and that's the only one I can think of here in Newbury.
Yeah. How did some of the world events affect you and Newbury residents during your time here? So, for example, you haven't been here for any of the wars, but any presidents or 9/11 or COVID, do any of those stand out as events that sort of impacted Newbury life?
The big one would be, for me, would be COVID, and the fact of being unable to meet. If so, it was being very careful. Masks certainly, and hand wipes and that sort of thing. But probably the biggest thing that got my interest on that is that there was everywhere there were still kind of non-believers about it, that this will just go away, and it was kind of surprising to see that. It happened everywhere, but not just in Newbury, but. I know professional people who lost their job because they wouldn't get inoculated.
Yep, for sure. So, are there any local stories or legends that you've heard about, or local traditions and gatherings that are important?
A local tradition, which I think is really nice, is the July 4th parade in South Newbury. As people speed through, Newbury here to get to elsewhere, they don't get to go through South Newbury anymore, and it's such a wonderful to see this whole little village set off to the side without the, trucks heading to Walmart, driving through there. And they still get together and they have this July 4th parade, and everybody looks forward to it. I think it's a wonderful tradition. Another one that's gained speed over the last more than a dozen years now is the tree lighting that we have at the Center Meeting House. I don't know who started the Old Home Day. I think it was Dennis Pavlik had a lot to do with that.
I think it was Dennis.
Our former town manager. The turnout for that has been absolutely wonderful. And the fireworks, I don't know if that draws the people or whether it's the food trucks that draw the people, but that's turned into an absolutely wonderful tradition here in our town. Everybody invites their relatives to come up. I know that's one of the days out of the summer that my daughter makes sure that, she brings her family up on an event like that.
It's a pretty great event. Okay, what makes living in Newbury and Lake Sunapee special to you as you think back over your time here?
I think it's a sense of home and family and activity. Being with the people that you love, and being able to experience the outdoors, here, whether it's on the lake or on the mountain or hiking.
Yeah. That's all I have for questions. Anything, Judy or Leah?
So I think you've covered it very well.
Another wonderful thing is this building that we're sitting in here. This is a gift, huh?
We're very excited. Yeah.
Yeah. I've learned that at one time, the library has moved around here in town to many different. It was in private homes for many years.
I think at one point there might have been 3 libraries in Newbury. Yeah. But it was great that little statistical report you sent me yesterday.
Yeah, wasn't that cute?
Yeah.
It said that what was that, 1890 or something? 1893.
Yeah.
You had 1,000 books.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, 1,000 books, but Colonel Hay had made a considerable donation.
Right.
In 1890, that $25 was a lot of money, I guess, to buy books.
Yeah.
But I think it also speaks to what did Hay like to do when he came here? It wasn't just sit on his veranda and watch the steamships. Mm-hmm. I think he probably went for the books.
Yeah.
Deane, is there anything else Newbury that we didn't talk about that you think is important to talk about?
the two things that come to mind are the firehouse and the police station. And that the town has moved with the growth that it's had, and we're able to, have these fine group of volunteers that, in the firehouse, to keep us safe, and have the equipment to be able to do those kinds of dangerous jobs. And the same for the police department is that I remember when I first came to town, Arthur Jones was our police chief. I don't know if that was a full-time job then.
It was. I
Was
think
it
it was.
Was it?
I think it
Yeah.
was full time.
And now look, we have five officers now, I believe.
I believe so.
Yeah, so
Full time.
the town has kept up with it.
Yeah.
The town has kept up with it. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming in and
It's
speaking
been my
with us.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, ladies.
Yeah.